Welcome back to Chem 101. Today we're going to talk about ions. So I had mentioned in a previous video that all atoms consist of three parts. They have protons, they have neutrons, and they have electrons. Now electrons carry a negative charge and protons carry a positive charge. And in all the periodic table elements that you're looking at on the periodic table or up here, we're looking at neutral elements. So that means the number of electrons equals the number of protons. So for hydrogen with one proton, it would also have one electron. Fluorine with 9 protons would also have 9 electrons. But what happens when they gain or lose electrons? Well, they become ions, and there are two types. There are cations that form plus charges, and there are anions that form minus charges. So let's see how we can figure out what's going to happen. So for all of these guys here, we're going to form some cations, and here we'll form some anions. So let me finish writing this here. 2 protons, 2 electrons, 3 protons, 3 electrons. All right, let's see what happens when each one of these loses 1 electron. So if hydrogen loses 1 electron, it actually becomes the ion H+, because it only has 1 proton, and that proton has a positive charge. Helium losing an electron now becomes helium+, because it has 2 protons and only 1 electron to cancel out. You can kind of think of it as the 2 plus charges that it has and the 1 minus charge that it has. Well, one of these are going to cancel each other out, and we're left with just a proton. Lithium, 3 protons, 3 electrons. If it loses 1, it becomes lithium+. What if they lost more than 1 electron? What if helium actually lost all of its electrons? And instead of there being one to cancel out its 2 protons, it just has 2 protons. Well, then it would be 2+. So we always look at the number of protons and the number of electrons. And in this case, we end up with more protons than electrons. That's why they're all plus charged. But what if we get more electrons than protons? So for example, fluorine has 9, but what if it gained 1 and now had 10? Well, now we would draw fluorine as F- to indicate that it now has 1 extra electron. Oxygen has 8 protons. What if it also had 10 electrons? Well, now there's 2 more electrons. You can think about it the same way. If we draw 8 little pluses, and now we have 10 electrons, so each of these pluses is getting canceled out, but now we have 2 extra minuses. So this would be O, 2 minus. So you look at the protons and you look at the electrons, and you let them decide what charge you're going to have overall. In a later video, we'll talk about how we know how many electrons can lose or gain. Because, for example, lithium and hydrogen, based on their row in the periodic table, based on the column that they're in, they only lose 1 electron, whereas helium will lose 2 electrons. And so their position had a lot to do with how many electrons they'll gain or lose. But we'll talk about that in a different video. Here, I just wanted you to be aware of the 2 types of ions: anions, which are negatively charged, and cations, which are positively charged, and how we can actually figure out those charges. All right, in the next video, we'll talk about isotopes, and that's when we have different numbers of neutrons instead of electrons.